Michael Comeau, you're a marketing consultant based in New York City. I'm very excited to have you on my podcast, and I look forward to an informative and fun talk about marketing, psychology, and how you really work on getting your clients what they want. So I would love if you could just spend a few minutes introducing yourself and say what you're all about and why you came to work with marketing.
Okay, Marco, first, thank you for having me. I'm really happy to be here. I'm really excited to, learn about your audience and learn from them. And, because I do love design. I don't know if you could see it, but I have a copy of David Carson's End of Print, like right over there somewhere. Okay, so my name is Michael Comeau. I'm a marketing consultant based in New York City, and I mostly work with coaches, consultants, authors, solopreneurs that basically need stronger messages so they can connect with their audience because they want to make money. They want to sell courses, they want to sell more books, they want to sell coaching programs, all of these things. And I used to think my job was primarily email marketing and copywriting, but a lot of it these days, it's coming back to sort of empathy developer, because I found over my career that the biggest challenge is getting people to understand that their customers are not buying their services or their skills, they're buying some kind of outcome. And that's a lesson I've been learning the hard way for over 20 years from now. I mean, I started my career at a Japanese automotive company doing auto industry research. And even there, I could see there's not a whole lot of listening to actual real people. There's a lot of quote unquote research being done, but it's generally to just confirm what the executives already believe. So again, I've realized my mission has become figure out what people want and then sell it to them in a way they're okay with.
That's very interesting that you mentioned you've been working for bosses that basically just want to reconfirm what they want, what they already know. Can you touch a little bit more how you use psychology and empathy in your job as understanding clients?
Yeah, so it comes down to digging deep and studying what people want and going beyond surface level. Like, so the easiest example is to understand is something like weight loss, where people will say things like, oh, I want to be healthier, I want to live longer, but a lot of it comes down to things like vanity. I just want to look good at the beach. Like, I want to be, the best looking person at the wedding. And then things can get even like progressively darker. I don't want to have this disease that some family member got. So a lot of it comes down to just understanding what people really want. And with a lot of consumer products, things come down to vanity and status. There are things people want just because they're expensive and because other people want them. There are so many things that don't have real utility. Like, for example, there are $20,000 handbags, there are $500,000 sports cars, but people want them for whatever reason. And it's very rarely logical. So, I mean, a lot of it comes down to just digging to understand what people want. And the way you can do that, a lot of it is open-ended surveys is probably one of the big things I did early in my career was surveys for that Japanese auto company. And they were all multiple choice, and you couldn't really gain anything because, first of all, when you do multiple choice, you're giving people very limited options and you can't really get the things that are on their mind. So I like to ask things like, what are your goals for the next 30 days? What are your goals for the next 6 months? What is your biggest fear regarding XYZ? And then people tell you what's really on their minds, and your products and your marketing should come from that, not what you believe is to be true.
And when you did those surveys, were those surveys you gave to them they could fill out in their own time, or were those conversations?
Okay, so most of the time they're surveys because these are online things. Like, for example, almost every single client I deal with, I give them a 2-question survey, and it's literally what is your goal for the next. Usually, I go with days and 6 months, or sometimes 3 months in a year. It kind of depends on the genre. Like, for example, there are some things like music where it might take a lot of time to develop real progress, but I'm looking for kind of a short-term and an intermediate-term goal. And then, because the answers people give don't often like match up with what you would imagine. Like, let's just say you were selling video courses on how to learn how to play guitar. You might imagine people will say things like, oh, I want to be able to play in a band, or I want to go on a stage, or this and that. But the answers might be, I want to learn how to play a Taylor Swift song. And that might be it. And then and sometimes, bizarrely, a lot of people randomly say the same things. Now, if you're giving an open-ended survey and 50 people give you the same answer, like, you know that that is what people really want.
Do you also sometimes have to kind of interpret whatever answer they give you and kind of look behind that to see what they really want in a different way? Maybe they don't even know what they want, but they're telling you something that tells you what that answer may be.
Yeah, so I've noticed something specifically with any type of industry related to selling to men. Status is a big thing. And they don't come right out and say it. But a lot of times it's not just about things like making money or getting in better shape. It's being the guy who makes more money and gets in better shape. Like, it's not just about the thing itself. It's also about the status of having that thing. Very often in these types of discussions, I am detecting a lot of like motives related to status and vanity.
So it sounds like you use a lot of psychology knowledge in the way you approach and work with clients.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I'm an absolute complete nerd with everything related to psychology, human decision making, because for a long time, I used to think people were rational and logical. And if I just said, hey, here's this awesome product, they would buy it. But I've actually dealt with scenarios where I asked people what product they wanted, built it to the T, and then none of them bought it because they thought they wanted one thing, but they really wanted another. I'll give you a quick example. I once met an expert golf copywriter. So he wrote sales pages and sales materials to sell things to golfers. And he said that no matter what, all golfers want to do is hit the ball really far. They don't want to be consistent. They don't want to be precise. All they want to do is hit it 200 yards or 250 yards or whatever it is. So a lot of it is silly little things like that. It's just the basic thing that most people want and that's what you have to give them.
Yeah, to be the guy that hit it out of the park like that.
Yeah, I would say that's like the deeper, the secondary thing. It's like, so the goal they're aware of is to hit it out of the park. The one that's in the back of their head that they don't even know is the status part.
So you kind of have to look through whatever they're saying. A man comes in and say, I want to do this e-course about doing this, about this and this, but the real goal may be something completely different, related to status and related to what that business can make him feel.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. So because I've dealt with also like social media influencers that say, you know, like, for example, let's say real estate expert on YouTube wants to build like online community to sell courses and memberships and things. I can tell he wants to be a god to people. He wants to be the cult leader. Now, in his mind, he just wants to make money. But the things I'm reading between the lines is he wants to be the hero to everybody, even more than he wants money. This is, very few people will believe me when I say this, but there are tons and tons of people out there that are way more motivated by power, by being perceived as powerful, rather than making money.
You mentioned, have you mainly worked with men or have you worked with the women as well? And where do you see the main difference in what men and women want, like overall?
I come to think of it, almost most of my clients have been men. I would say 80% at least. And even and I'm trying to think of like the customers, and even the customers of those clients are mostly men. And is there a big difference between them? I would say that women are more likely to want to know why. And that a lot of times the men will just be overly focused on the outcome and women will want to know more about why things work. I would say that that's the biggest difference.
Like, for example, why my newsletter was more popular last week than this week?
No, more about like why are you doing this particular thing? Like they might want to dig more into the details of a lot of individual things. Like I've noticed in general in business that men are often, not always, but often more likely to be willing to get ugly to get the results they want.
To get down and dirty and do the hard task to get to
No,
the goal?
not about hard tasks, but more about, let's just say, being real. There are cases where it pays to be really aggressive and nasty and polarizing in marketing. And I feel like women will often be concerned with the collateral damage from that because you don't get one without the other. There's always a balance to be struck and it's never clear exactly where it is. So you can always argue things either way, but it's hard to say because like I've worked with women that are very, very, very aggressive and I've worked with men that were much more cautious and frankly terrified of doing or saying anything that might be the least bit controversial.
So when you think back of your projects over the last 20 years, can you mention some projects that really stood out to you in terms of this was a very interesting process, we got to this goal, any kind of projects you can think of?
Yeah, so I can tell you about the worst project I've ever done. And this one, I have no one to blame but myself. So I'll challenge anyone in the audience to spot the problem with the mode of thinking here. So if you want, I'll babble a little bit at the beginning, but you can post in the comments. So I was relaunching a digital product that had been around for, I would say, 6 or 7 years and never took off. Had a low it was a subscription service. So
an online product. Yeah.
Okay. So it never sold really well. The people to whom it sold did not stick around long, so it had a low retention rate. The person I was dealing with on this project was an absolute nightmare. Huge ego in the face of no results. Now, I often love people with gigantic egos because they tend to be really entertaining and can be very fun to work with in some ways. But when there's no results, it gets tired real fast. Now, I think like the answer is obvious. It's why was I trying to work on something that nobody wanted? You know, there was not a sign of life. So I spent 3 or 4 weeks developing new sales pages, new messaging, creating a new offer, creating a webinar, creating sales emails. And then, so now the email list is an important part of the story. There's about 90,000 people, somewhere between 80 and 90,000 people on the email list. And these were warm prospects. They weren't like from cold ads on Facebook or YouTube, 80 to 90,000 warm prospects. So perfect customer base. So I fire up the campaign. It's time to get everything out. And I think it made something like $78, like not 78,000. Like I would have hoped to make 78,000, but it made like $78. And like, so I basically put in a month's worth of work to make about $80 on a product where there was no evidence that it was ever going to work. And again, like, you know, we started off talking about empathy. It all started with not listening to the customer and instead trying to sell something nobody wanted.
Because the person wanted to sell that thing because he liked it, or?
Yeah. So of course, so we have a person with, so now this is a classic example of a person who is so obsessed with his own process and ego that he thinks people are stupid for not buying his product. This is a huge problem I see it in marketing. I'm sure, you know, this podcast, the audience is mostly designers, where people have fundamentally something lousy that nobody wants, and they think they can fix it with marketing or design or messaging or whatever. And because the problem is the customers are incapable or too stupid to understand how amazing this is. I've seen this a million times. It plays out again and again. It's so rare for somebody to say, I don't know what I'm doing. Is this a bad product? Like, people do not ask that question. It's so rare for anybody to say my product stinks. So almost everybody I come into contact with, even if it's just friends texting me for help on business things, what do you think of that? They almost always think they have a marketing problem. They usually also have product problems. It's so rare that it's not the case. I mean, I actually had an interesting prospect meeting. I did not close any business from it. It didn't work out, but I met this guy from Australia who was selling this very, very niche certification exam for a highly specialized profession in Australia. And it was like $3,000, and he was selling it straight off Facebook ads to like one of the worst sales pages I've ever seen, rather. And I was like, this is a guy who knows his customers. He doesn't know how to sell or market yet, but he has something people want, because he told me, he's like, yeah, people seem happy. They send in positive testimonials. Nobody asks for refunds. So that guy has a product. That's a sign of life, because people are consuming it, they're using it, and they're offering positive feedback. You know, something really interesting I learned recently about Jeff Bezos, who founded Amazon, is that when he sees anecdotes and data conflict, he chooses the anecdotes, which I think is really interesting. And when it comes to things like product development, I often count on anecdotes just as much as data. Because like when something might not sell really well at first, but if people are emailing in or they're talking about you on social media, like they're physically taking action, that's the type of thing you want to dedicate your design assets, your marketing assets towards, not the thing that's never worked. Like you always want a sign of life before you put, you're all behind something.
So are you able to just elaborate a little bit about the data and the anecdote, how you see the difference in reading those two things? Because if you have people actually buying it, that's also data, right?
Yeah. And yeah, absolutely. Because nothing speaks louder than sales. Actually, one thing speaks louder, zero, because the only accurate piece of data is zero. Because something failed. When things succeed, you can't always know exactly why they did. You can't pinpoint for sure every single time. Now, as far as data versus anecdotes go, things can sell, but I find that when there's no accompanying passionate anecdotes, they tend to run out of gas. Like
a human component, a human testimonial, some emotion about that product.
Yeah, because a lot of times things can sell well because of great marketing. But if nobody's writing in and saying, this is amazing, thank you, that also plays into things like there's probably no word of mouth. And that's the issue. Now, you don't want to throw out data altogether, but I find that great products kind of sell themselves, and people will actually tell you how to market them through those anecdotes. But yeah, it's because I have seen cases where something sells like gangbusters, and then let's just say you have a 30-day refund policy. Day 29, your sales evaporate through refunds.
And sometimes also speak with designers that they've identified this awful looking website, and they want to work with this company to redesign it to make it beautiful. And the business owner saying, I don't need to change it because it's selling like fire. It's doing the job. And I remember we also had a conversation about, you mentioned that you're doing a weekly email, a newsletter for a company. And you mentioned that you go back to the most basic versions sometime, and you find changing it, like it doesn't work. So can you talk about a little bit about that, when design doesn't need to be flashy and when it's just the most basic approach that works the best?
Yeah. So I have noticed. So I think the designers listening, they might really hate what I'm about to say. There are some things, and I don't know why, that just work the first time you do them. So the best performing opt-in page I've ever created has been running for over 4 years. It is so ugly, and I've split test against it 20 or 25 different things that nothing improves it. It just hit the first time. Yeah, I do think it is a challenge for designers to sometimes understand that sometimes the ugly thing just works. And you can't explain why. It's like all this. Sometimes the cosmic forces come together. There's also an issue of demographics. Like, so I'm going to get a little bit political right here. But basically, anything you see marketed on like Fox News, sort of like old school conservative media, is targeted at older men that could be in like their 60s, 70s, or 80s that would be totally confused by a modern website. Like, you know those hamburger menus on website at the top? Old people don't know what that is. Like, so it's like, so you multiply that times a million towards any kind of complex website. Like, for example, like I've noticed on Apple's website, if you're looking at the iPhone and you scroll down, there's all these flashing things coming in and out. Whereas an older person might just see a bold headline in front of them and they're like, that's it. That's all I need to know. So yeah, so there are issues like that, but it is interesting. But also, that's just a sign. Sometimes somebody has a great product. They could also just be famous. If somebody's really well known, you can get away with a lot. Fame is a conversion multiplier like nothing else in the world. Like, it's kind of sad, but if you want to sell more of anything, being famous is probably the best way to do it. But yeah, but I think it is a harsh truth. I mean, I used to be a photographer, and I went through the same thing because I would think I'm making like all these cool photos that have really interesting lighting. And then the client's like, or the prospective client is like, I just like this phone I took. I like this picture I took with my iPhone better. And I'm like, but wait a minute. I used my $2,000 camera and my $1,000 lens, $1,000 worth of lighting equipment, and I took all this time to plan it out and set it up. But you like your iPhone picture. But I mean, at the end of the day, all that means is that person was not the right client for me because they already had what they needed.
Yeah, and then maybe they needed to work with you to see what they already had was good for them. So sometimes to work with some other person, realize that, oh, I actually have what I need. So I want to talk a little bit about AI. I know we have also been talking about that and how it's changing everything. And I used it today at a client meeting, and it was really being a co-pilot, and it helped come up with a potential company name, and it was pretty spot on. So can you give me some examples about how you use AI in your process?
Okay, so I rotate between multiple AI apps mostly because I find they break a lot. And when I say break, I mean I will have some specific function because a lot of what I do it's fixing text, it's replacing certain things, moving things around, and also running through checklists I have. But the actual writing I like to do myself because to me that's the easy part. Like, if I'm really into something, writing a 15,000 word sales page, that's the fun part for me. So I don't want to let AI do that. Where I use AI is to find my blind spots. Because when you're dealing with huge quantities of text that you're creating off the top of your head and from notes, like, it's easy to lose sight of the focus. So it can be things like I can dump my text in and say, is this driving people towards goal ABC? Also, AI is amazing for picking up consistency issues. For example, like if you're numbering things or lettering things. So for format consistency, it's amazing for ensuring that I don't screw up company names or product names, things like that. So I sort of use AI as my second set of eyes, and also to see if anything's missing. Like sometimes I just dump my text into ChatGPT, or now I'm starting to use Gemini a little more. And I'll just say, is anything missing from this? Just as simple as that. And sometimes it spits out some random things. And that helps a lot. But again, like I don't let AI do any of the stuff I like to do. I mostly have it doing annoying stuff.
Have you identified an area where AI is really bad, like where it really doesn't do you any help?
So AI creates a lot of word salad. So I use AI. I use it primarily for text, and even when I try to program it to write like me, it can't because it doesn't. It can sort of emulate style, but not that well yet. And I can often spot AI writing a mile away. I once was talking to this gigantic, like basically a small bank that did like small business loans, and they had thousands of articles on their website, and they were all written by AI. I asked them, I was like, "Who do you have writing all this stuff?" And they were like, "Oh, it's like we have an AI agency," and it was crazy. It was all terrible. But I'm sorry, I'm getting lost. Where were we?
I was asking if you see some areas where AI is not really that helpful.
I mean, I find that AI, yeah. So back to that, AI can't do humor. It's never funny. Like, I'm kind of obsessed with language, so I always think it just sounds like lame and contrived and stiff, and I'm never shocked. That's the thing. It's like I've never read anything where I thought, I'm surprised this is from AI. Like that's the thing. For me, it's more it takes care of like the 20% of work I absolutely hate doing. There's nothing I hate more than going through a gigantic document and trying to make sure I spelled the product name or the company name right every time. Like things like that. I've even found issues where AI can't follow simple instructions, where I will say, copy edit this. And then it will start inserting opinions and extra facts. And even when I say, do not add any more information to this, like it will, sometimes I just find there's issues like that. But so far for me, AI has been, a huge positive because it just makes so much of that annoying work so much easier to deal with.
I definitely also find that sometimes it just does random stuff, and sometimes it doesn't want to say, I don't know how to do this. It just keeps saying, I've done that. And I said, no, you haven't. Yes, I've done it now. No, you have not. You have not changed all of the text to not being bold type. You haven't done it.
So
it doesn't want to say, no, I can't do that.
I have a theory that ChatGPT and all these other companies, they intentionally have the AI be wrong or do crazy things as a testing mechanism. So, because I've actually given some thought to, if you go to like ChatGPT and ask it to make a picture of a man holding up a sign, it gets the text wrong so often. Like for example, you could say, make a picture of an old man holding a sign that says Happy 4th of July. And it's shocking how often the text is wrong. Because that seems like in terms of creating an image, that should be the easiest thing. So sometimes I think that AI messes up on purpose and just uses us as the sort of testers.
Yeah, I wanted to mention, I want to talk to you a little bit about how, if you use AI to generate images as well and videos, do you do that, and do you have some specific services that you use more?
So I use Grok because Grok basically has no rails. So I don't use them for anything serious, though. Like in my line of work, the goofy AI image is actually a look people are okay with these days, where you have like a silly photo of like a gorilla surfing or something, or like a duck lifting weights. I think people kind of like accept that that's sort of today's stock image. So I don't use it for anything too serious because I find it very rarely works. When you need it to look like something very specific, though, I haven't gone down the Mid-Journey route. I'm mostly using like ChatGPT and Grok for images. So I can't say for sure for like Mid-Journey and more advanced programs, but it's so rare that I can get it to look like what I want. Even if I write an extensive like long prompt because I know photography. So I can say, give me a portrait photo of this type of person with this type of lens using this type of film with this aspect ratio, with this perspective. And it never gives me, maybe Midjourney does, but in my experience with sort of like the simpler tools, it doesn't really work.
So in your job, in your career, you've been working with a lot of designers and a lot of different skill sets, photography, images, graphics. Can you kind of see a blind spot that designers have from your point of view? Like something that designers need to really look more into and improve on?
Okay, so I'll give one little tip for freelancers of any kind of creative freelancer. This is going to sound kind of silly, but this could save you from losing jobs. It's make sure you spell, and this is a great use of AI. Make sure you spell company names, product names, and people names correctly. You never know what anal retentive person on the client side will lose their minds, and they will assume you have bad attention to detail. You're not paying attention. So it is shocking how that little thing can sometimes like help a relationship. It sounds silly because, that's not the end product. And those are little things that can be fixed later. But sometimes like those little attention to detail go a long way. Now, as far as blind spot goes, it's designers have the same problem as photographers, have the same problem as writers, as copywriters. Every sort of creative brain is obsessed with their own process too much because the client wants an outcome, and great design is not the outcome. Because most of the time, the people with the money and the power to hire you, like, they don't care. I mean, maybe a chief marketing officer or, an advertising creative director does, but like ultimately at the end of the line with whoever's paying the bills, like they're trying to achieve a business outcome. And I find that like if you are on a call selling to people, the more you're talking about yourself and your skills and your portfolio, the less likely you are to actually sell and get them to say, yes, I want to hire you. I feel like almost every creative freelancer or, well, any creative at all, the entire conversation should be about what the person on the other side is trying to achieve. So every conversation should start with, where are you taking your company over the next year? Now, if you recall before, like when I was surveying customers, I would say, what is your goal for the next 12 months or 3 months or whatever it is? If I'm talking to a CEO or an author or a coach, that's the same exact thing. Because I want him to associate me with going from 5 million to 8 million in sales. I don't want him to associate with me, guy that charges $5,000 for whatever product, for whatever project, because then I'm an expense. You want to be an investment. And I actually, when I was out walking this morning, because I was thinking about being on this podcast. Now, what's the difference between Canva and a real designer? The real designer's an investment, and Canva's a $10 a month expense. Now, if the designer positions himself or herself as the person that can help the company get an extra 5 million, 10 million, whatever it is in sales, that's a whole nother topic. Like you're having a completely different conversation. And from a psychological perspective, this is called getting people to think past the sale. So they are imagining working with you because like Marco, if I'm thinking about hiring you as a designer, if you and I are talking about how my business is going to go from point A to point B, I'm already acting like I've hired you and I'm working with you. So you always want the conversation to be about where things are going. Like, not about, do you use Photoshop or do you use InDesign? Like, do you use vector graphics? Like at the end of the day, like none of it matters. You need to be seen as part of the growth team.
I see that a lot with designers and myself as well. Like many designers, way too much focus on the portfolio, and I need to update my portfolio. I need to post this. I need to take a better photo. people don't care. People want to go from A to B and sell more products, get more coaching clients, sell more online courses. I think it's a lesson for designers to not focus on our portfolio. Focus on where you want to take your client and be a collaborator in that journey.
Yeah, I mean, being good is the bare minimum. I think it's important to be skilled because you also want authority at somebody. So I do think marketing and sales, a lot of it is emotion, but you also, people want to feel good about what they buy, because you could be a hell of a salesman and do all kinds of mental judo on people to get them to buy from you. And then you deliver a bad product that doesn't help. And then they feel duped. And then
so it's really, it needs to have substance, but yeah.
Yeah, sorry to cut you off, but unless you're a sociopath, like knowing what you're doing gives you such a leg up. It sounds stupid to say, but like knowing what you're doing gives you natural authority. Listen, like I did not learn these lessons the easy way. I've learned these the hard way. And, you know, it's like before I had this, you know, I spent a month on a project and generated like $78 in sales, which is ridiculous. And I have a million stories like that. And almost all the time it comes down to, I didn't listen to what people really cared about.
Yeah, that's very spot on. Like we need to listen. And I want to listen to you a little bit more. We have about 5 more minutes left or so. Is there anything that you want to cover? Is there something that we didn't talk about? Something that you think my audience could get value from?
Yes, I think it's important for people to think about why they choose the things they do and try to be brutally honest with yourself. Like I'll give you an example. So I'm running the New York City Marathon this year.
Yes. So
now,
cool.
Okay, so on one level, I'm trying to be healthier. I'm trying to lose weight. There's also a part of me that really wants to tell people I ran the marathon. So I think it's really healthy to be brutally honest with yourself about why you do the things you do. You know, because that will help you understand how people really operate. Like it's okay to want things for bad reasons that make no sense. Like allow yourself to be a little vain and selfish. Like maybe you want to buy something and you just want other people to see you with it. Maybe you want to go eat at a certain restaurant because, you know, you want to be the first one of your friends to be there. Like just be brutally honest about why you make the decisions you do, and you will learn how to do business with people.
Yeah, because we all really try to get our human needs met, and we all have different human needs. And so I think that it's a good skill to learn to see those needs in other humans and yourself.
Okay, actually, can I give one more sales tip to people?
Of course.
Okay, if you struggle with selling, go buy a mattress. I'm serious. Go to the mattress store and let them try to sell you a mattress, and you will get a sales masterclass in the space of about 15 minutes. So the first thing they do is they want to see what kind of bed you like. Do you like a hard bed? Do you like a soft bed? Now, what do? They start setting you down on different beds. And the ones they put you down on are like the $5,000 and $6,000 ones. So if you were coming in trying to spend $500 on a bed, like now you're thinking, all right, well, maybe $1,200's not bad. It's like there's a million tricks you will learn from shopping for a mattress. And selling a mattress is no different than selling your graphic design services. It's all price anchoring, psychology, outcome, because what's more important than how well you're going to sleep?
True. I love that example about going to buy a mattress, because yeah, of course, why would you have them try a shitty mattress? Of course, you start with the good one. And then you have already okay, we can go down from here.
Yeah, and listen, I know every trick in the book. They work on me too. That's the funniest thing. I was like, I know exactly what this mattress guy is doing, and I'm falling for it. Hook, line, and sinker.
So did you buy the expensive mattress?
Yeah, and it was a great mattress, but like I don't want to drag the story out too long, but I ended up with like a motorized bed that goes up and down, like, because it was just another way to get like another $300 out of me or something. But he packaged it in a way where it's like, okay, I have to do it.
That's a great example, and I will be thinking about that going forward for sure. And Michael, I think it's been a pleasure. I've learned a lot, and I'm sure the audience will learn a lot as well about marketing, psychology, putting your ego aside, really looking for what people really want, human needs. I think it's very fascinating, this whole world of psychology and just how we act as humans, because a lot of it is known, a lot of it is something we just do without thinking about it. So I really appreciate all your insights and your examples, and I thank you for being on this podcast. That was great.
Awesome. Thank you for having me, Marco.
Thank you so much, Michael. Thank you.